Hello, I am Bentham and welcome back to Factorio Railworld. In the previous episode we made our way up to the new outpost of Cape Kerbal. We were going by the Lake Railway and setting it up properly for trains to start running along more regularly, though it did turn out that the stone train was running along anyway. Now it's probably set up so that multiple trains can be going along either direction and not crash into each other or get stuck or whatever. And we did that by setting up some passing points, which I've since been told are actually passing loops, which is fine by me. It means more loops, which are always fun in my rail networks. So we're going to start setting up a bit of infrastructure over in Cape Kerbal. We already have some power working, as well as defences. And now I start putting in a bit of logistics so that we can start having a more sort of repairing and stuff, making sure, like, the initial purpose of this will be to help with the defences. We'll get some repair packs and some spare turrets and things like that set up, because this place is going to get attacked by the biters. It's not that far away from them, and with them being more aggressive recently, that sort of thing is definitely going to be happening a lot more. So I just put in a row of rubber ports, and I also start setting up some more power, just plonking down dozens of substations. My idea here is to just get the entire outpost covered with substations, and then we don't have to worry about power later on. That's sort of the idea of it. Because usually you always set up your factory bits and then you find out if you can set up the power to cover them. So I'm just plonking a bunch of substations down now, so we just have a big blanket of power coverage, and the hope is that that will power anything we need to set up. We can sort of work around it and keep a nice consistent coverage. Basically I'm trying to save on sort of annoyingness and faff later with things not lining up nicely in terms of the power, as well as the rubber ports. If I can put the rubber ports in before I put the factory in, I can make sure not to get in the way of the rubber ports. And it's not like we need, like, we want to have sort of minimal coverage if possible, just get it so that the entire base is covered with the orange bit, the logistics bit, without having a lot of overlapping and stuff to save on power usage and stuff like that, because rubber ports do have a lot of sort of background power use, and you can't put modules in them, so when you have your, like, tiny power network, which is just a bunch of solar panels and accumulators separated from the main network, you want to be careful about just how much power you're using. But I imagine that the actual, like, production of the factory will not be using that much at all, because we're only going to have, like, the very last stage of rocket production going on here, and everything else is going to be done back in the main base. Anyway, I'm setting up some flooring. I start concreting a bunch of stuff. We brought along that train nearly fully loaded with 2 wagons of concrete, so we can just start blanketing the whole place in it, making it look a bit nicer and more industrial and so on. And we basically managed to empty out one of the cargo wagons onto the ground, and we just put it all into the logistics network and let the bots deal with it. I set up a blueprint and get that working. And then while the bots work on that bit by bit, and I just occasionally go over and update it with some more blueprinting, we start setting up the train. We have a 4-wagon train here, which I've decided will be the main, if not sole, delivery train for Cape Kerbal. You may have spotted there a train ran past. Don't even know what that was. I'm assuming it was the stone train, because that was what came by before, but this came rocketing through on the way to probably the midpoint or wherever. But we're going to have this one 4-wagon train supplying the entire outpost. That's the sort of plan I've come up with, and it's just going to be loaded with all the different components you need to set up the rockets. So we've got one wagon, which is 50% copper, 50% plastic, and then a wagon for solid fuel, and then a wagon for steel. And we also get some steel loaded into this rear wagon as well. The 4th wagon is all the little bits and bobs that we need for random important bits. So we've got speed modules, concrete, processing units, solar panels, accumulators, radars, pipes, electric engines, and then we also put a bit more of steel in, and we also fill it with a couple of random bits and bobs for keeping the factory, I was going to say town, I keep wanting to say town because of Factorio towns, but keep the outpost operational, so walls, the 2 kind of turrets, some ammo and stuff like that. Just so that if anything gets blown up, the bots can just grab some from the train and have a pretty continuous supply to keep things safe. Because we'll probably leave this for a very long time. Once we've got things set up and working well, we'll probably wander off and do other things while this factory gets on with making a bunch of rockets. We set up a bit more concrete production there. Then we also start putting this station more properly in place. This is just going to be a sort of backup station in a sense for any other stuff that turns out to need delivering. There's basically the three stations, the giant one for the mega train, the big one for, well, the medium one, I guess, for the main supply train, and then we'll have a standard one for 2 wagon trains that can also fit longer ones in, just because I've left room for sort of queuing and stuff, so you can either have 2 short trains or 1 long train in it, and that can supply whatever extra bits are needed. The mega train shouldn't need to come here once we finish working on the factory. We'll just occasionally grab some bits from it to help us with setting things up, and then eventually we'll send it back home, and it shouldn't need to visit here again. Then the medium station, of course, is where there's going to be pretty regular journeys, and then we'll probably just use this station for occasional visits to make sure we don't interfere with the operation of the main station. Though, of course, for that we could always just park up at the mega train station. Though if you ever get any loading set up for the mega train, then you end up loading stuff into the other trains that you're delivering by accident. Anyway, once we've got things set up, I decided to go back to the main base. I'm going to make sure that I can get the train loaded before I work on the unloading at the other end, and then we'll see where things go from there. So we start making our way around the newly set up bit of the, I guess, the northwest Lake Railway. One of the longest journeys, I think, for a train to take without visiting any stations. Like, there is the journey from the main base to the midpoint, which is longer, but then you do stop off, well, not necessarily stop off, but you go through Mega Copper at least. Whereas this one is just a big old empty stretch of nothing for a good while until you finally arrive at the good old station of Iron Outpost 2. And then we end up going around the north side of the main factory loop before arriving back in one of our spare stations here. Luckily, because of the way things are set up, it doesn't start getting loaded with concrete, which is because I set a bunch of filters up in the train already, so there weren't any for concrete. There is one in the rear wagon though, actually, so we maybe could have just pulled the train forward a bit and loaded that like now before we sort it out later, but then we might have forgotten about it and forgotten to actually set up the more permanent loading. So I'm working out where I'm going to put the train to get it loaded, because it's going to have a sort of permanent berth in the main factory to have the load. Basically, it's going to be like the mega train in how it's loaded. It's just going to be gone for ages with the with all the chests getting filled up with the various materials. Then finally it'll arrive, get loaded really quick, and run off again to get back to the base. So it's going to spend like so much of its time traveling. We'll want to have a lot of high speed loading and unloading. So I'm just going to set up stack inserters on everything, whether it's necessarily needed or not. I'm not sure whether the production in Cape Kerbal will be that bothered about the rate at which things are loaded or anything. But what I do is I swap around these stations here. We had an empty one at the bottom of our south station section, and if we just moved the spare trains down to there, we renamed that station as the spare train station, and removed this old one, updated the trains, they all got sent round to there, and then this one will be the Rocketrain's loading, as I guess the train will be called. Rocketrain makes sense, it tells me what it's for. I forget what I ended up calling the station. It was something like rocket loading. I couldn't decide on what to call it, but it basically just needed to communicate to me that it's where the rocket components got loaded in. So we start plonking down a bunch of stack inserters, which is made a little bit easier by the fact that the bots deliver them to me. I think it's a good idea to just have them set up on your logistics network, which reminds me, a new feature has been implemented in a recent update. You now have, I forget what it's even called. I think they're called logistic trash slots. Or something like that, or logistic trash somethings. But basically the idea of them is that you can set an upper limit for items in your inventory, as I understand it. So if you want to have, like me, 5 stacks of iron on you at all times, but you're fed up of getting loads of extra iron loaded in when you like deconstruct some old bit of iron factory, like some iron belt, then you can set it so that the upper limit of the iron supply is, well, maybe 500 as well, or maybe 600, so there's a little bit of leeway. And then basically whenever you are overloaded with a certain item, the bots will come along and take it off you, which sounds awesome. I need to start setting that up once I've actually got the research. And at the moment I'm still working on other things. I'm trying to get inserter capacity bonus fully upgraded, just for the fun of that, really, just being able to load and unload trains at ludicrous speeds of 12 items at once. Rather than the old 4. And yeah, no more throughput problems now for the trains. That's all a thing of the past. Though I'm going to say it would have been even worse if we'd had the original loader building, which they were originally thinking of. I do believe that's some of the code for that has been left in the game, and so there is a mod that allows you to actually get the loader item, which is even more insanely overpowered than the stack inserter is, because it's literally just a belt can flow directly into a container without any problem at all. It's crazy. And you can make a blue variant, so you can just have a chest empty out onto a blue belt, with a single 2x1 sized item, which is just crazy. Anyway, the train's in position now. We want to start working out how we're going to get it loaded with the various items, and one of those items is ludicrous amounts of copper plate. So I decided to just siphon them straight off the output for the smelting column. And I'm wondering as I do this whether I'll need to actually set up a second smelting column again. A very long time ago we used to have 4 columns, and one of them, well, 2 of them were iron and 2 of them were copper, and I got rid of one of the copper ones because we set up a separate circuit making town, outpost even, and we didn't need anywhere near as much copper production anymore, so I just got rid of the furnaces, installed them over in the circuit outpost, and that worked out fine. We installed some extra ones there as well, but now all of a sudden we're going to be using a bunch of the copper to make low density structure back in Cape Kerbal, so we might need to increase the production again. But I get this belt set up, a blue belt leading all the way down to the train. Takes a while to do, and it's a bit messy. I could have sent it through a clearer space, but I thought there was a 1 belt wide gap going through the entire area there, so I decided to just fill that in with the copper line and do it like that. And it sort of keeps it clear of the rest of the stuff. I mean, maybe it would have turned out better. We'll have to see how things work out. But it's going to be a little bit fiddly getting all of the stuff for the rear cargo wagon sorted. I might just use logistics for it, because that doesn't make a fair bit of sense, rather than a lot of belt spaghetti delivering it from all over the factory. And I think we might actually need to do a bunch of upgrading to our production of various items as well, like electric engines. This thing's supposed to be loaded with 5 stacks of them, I think, or 2 stacks maybe, and we don't make them at anywhere near that sort of rate, really. We make them very, very slowly, so we'll probably need to do something there. Concrete might be okay, but I'm not sure. There's a lot of things where it's a case of just finding out what the loading rate is and seeing how that goes. But the next item on the list, I'm just sort of working my way back along the train. The next item is plastic, so we make our way over to the oil outpost and start setting up some new plastic production. I mean, at the moment the plastic production we have isn't running at full pelt, but I guess that we will probably end up needing a whole lot more production once we start loading it into the train. We need 20 stacks of the stuff per train visit, and that's a fair chunk, I think, relative to what this outpost has been used to. So I put 4 more chemical plants in place. I think that puts us up to 12, and I also start messing about a lot with the belts, because when I originally set this up there was a lot of trouble with throughput when it came to outputting the plastic. I ended up using 2 fast inserters and having it very messy and awkward looking, but now with the introduction of stack inserters I can just have 1 coming out of each chemical plant, and that works out fine. So I can neaten up the belts a bit, making it look a lot nicer, and work a fair bit more conveniently. Though we end up with quite a bit of an imbalance at the moment. Everything's sort of on one side of the belt, and it does run into a splitter, but I'm not sure how that will work once things are running at full pelt. I'll just have to see. And I also need to make sure to load these up with productivity modules, close, level 3s, to get the most use out of my oil as I can, because as happened a while ago, we've just completely run out of oil supply, and I just couldn't be bothered going and setting up a new oil outpost. It was just too much of a hassle, so I just loaded up all our current pump jacks with level 3 speed modules and all of our chemical plants and refineries and so on with level 3 processing units, productivity modules. They're very, very similar in terms of their structure. Yeah, loaded them up with level 3 modules just to stretch the oil supply as much as we possibly could, and it's worked out fine so far. It's produced stupid amounts of pollution, but that's fine because it's very far away from any biters, and the rest of the factory isn't doing anything. So I wouldn't be surprised if like half of our power consumption was from oil production, and like most of our pollution was generated because of it. Anyway, I spotted a bit of a problem with the coal supply over here. We used to have some coal mining going on in the oil outpost, but at some point recently it finally ran out for good, and caused a bit of a problem, because at the moment we've got like coal being loaded from one station here to another station, and then sent off elsewhere. And I realise as I'm setting this up that the coal supply that is not running quick enough, that is completely depleted, is in fact what is used to load the trains that park in the main base. And so it dawns on me that if the supply's not been running at the speed it needs to, then there is probably a bit of a problem with the rest of the train network. But anyway, I'm setting up some some new rails here. I was trying to work out where I could put a new station in here, and there just wasn't any room. So I just extended along, and I wonder why I never did that before, because this thing has always been massively cramped and like stupid looking. Like, I set this system up. It's got to be like more than 70 episodes since I like did anything with the rails. I originally set this up, I think, in like episode 10. It's crazy. This, like, one of the first trains I ever made was delivering from here to the main base with the various bits of oil stuff. And I've just added on bits to it and tried to make it work, and I realized early on that I'd set it up anti-clockwise, and I'd set up the rest of my rail network clockwise, and so the loop that it connects to the main base with is a mess, and it's all just horrible. And I'd left it all compact and terrible, and I suddenly realized that I don't actually need to do that. I can just make it a lot more convenient by extending the lines along a bit. Anyway, I go back to the main base to find that a bunch of trains have stopped, as I was concerned had happened, because the coal supply is outputted over here and then goes into all of the trains, and of course with it not running quick enough, it meant that all the trains were slowly running out of coal, and it finally reached breaking point while I was over there realizing it was a problem, and a bunch of trains from the main base suddenly shut down all at once. And unfortunately this has happened all across the rail network. It was not just that particular location there. All the trains that go to the main base via that route have run out. And so I have a look at the train menu and see where all the problems are, and it's all over the Lake Railway. So I have to sort of abandon what I'm doing for the moment and go deal with it. I've fixed the problem by having some extra loading going into the system there. So we'll just hop on board one of the spare trains and just start checking around the entire network and finding any stopped trains that there might be. So the reason that there was a problem is because of, like, it never would have happened if it wasn't for me not paying attention to the oil outpost and keeping bolting bits on without properly considering the big picture. So originally the oil outpost had a coal mine which was used to fuel all the trains in the network and just supply all coal for everything, and that lasted for like 80 episodes or something like that. A crazy amount of time. It wasn't that long ago really that it actually ran out, and it was supplying the entire factory for a long while. Of course, with us running off solar power for most of the factory's existence, there wasn't that much usage of coal in the system. It was mainly just for making plastic, which was over at that outpost anyway, and for keeping the trains running. So it would just be loaded onto the little oil train that goes to the oil outpost, and then from there it would go to the main base and unload next to the main station and be loaded into all the various trains. And for a while that worked fine because there was plenty of coal supply in the oil outpost. But eventually, after a very long time, the coal supply finally finished, and so we had to find an alternative. So we set up the new coal outpost just south of the circuit outpost, and that started supplying things. But rather than have that go to the main base and supply the trains there, which would have made more sense, but would have been a little bit clunky to set up, I decided to just deliver the coal to the oil outpost, and then have some of it be used for the plastic production, and some of it sent, loaded onto the oil train and then sent back over to the main base. So a bit of a messy method. And what I didn't realise was that I didn't have enough of a supply for it to work properly. Only one of the inserters was loading onto the other train, and all the other ones were loading the plastic, and that one inserter was not enough. And the coal train has had a couple of times where it's journeyed all the way around the lake instead of going the proper way, and it's been held up a couple of times to help the system deplete. And basically, after a very long time of it slowly winding down, it finally ran out, and all the trains shut down. And so what I've learned is that I should really set up a better system, have it so that the coal is just delivered to the main base more directly, because it would make more sense. We have the station in the south now. There is plenty of room for a train to arrive in the middle of all the trains and get the coal easily delivered to it, so I think I will set up something like that. But anyway, we're running around the Lake Railway. You saw there I managed to stop dead. I didn't know this, or maybe I did, but I'd forgot. But if you cancel a train's schedule, it stops dead with absolutely no slowdown time, which is super convenient. I don't know if that's always happened or whether it always will happen, but it was a very useful way to stop dead as I was passing through the midpoint and quickly check that the midpoint trains were fine, because I forget what trains even use that coal supply and whether that gets like delivered over to other places and then loaded there as well. and just how much of a mess the coal situation is. But we've come across another train. This is the third one, and I think we've now found all of them because we found 1 iron train and 2 copper trains, and so with that we should have all of them sorted. Also, that train there was just like, both of those were going around the lake. One of them I think was a coal train, one was a copper train, and both of them were going like around the north side of the lake, and I believe that is because of the pile-up, well, the traffic jam outside Mega Copper. The other copper train shutting down probably meant that those trains, when they checked for a path, found that they couldn't make it for whatever reason, and both decided to go around the north of the lake. So that seems to be happening a lot now. I need to be paying more attention to it. It could cause us a little bit of trouble. I have to keep an eye on that. But all the trains are fixed now. We can get back to loading the rocket train, and also fixing, I think, the oil outpost a little bit. So when we're back in the main base, we'll sort out that train again, go back to the middle, and I shall say goodbye. Thank you for watching, and I shall see you next time.